Hi, everyone. My name is Professor Stephen Friedman, and this is the Way Forward podcast. So I am filled with joy and gratitude that my colleague and friend and overall fantastic guy, Martin Waxman,
Maybe.
who is also an adjunct professor here at Schulich. He is a digital marketing and communications strategist. He delivers generative AI workshops and conducts AI research. He's the director of the Future of Marketing Institute, which is really
Associate director.
associate
Associate
director.
director.
Thank you. Sorry. Martin also writes a popular digital marketing trends newsletter with over 500,000 subscribers. Holy Moses. He's also a LinkedIn learning instructor with over 10 courses, and he is the co-founder of two PR agencies, the president of a consultancy. He's a member of the Institute for Public Relations and Digital Media Research Center and teaches a course in digital strategy. You have your Master's of Communication Management from McMaster, Syracuse,
Yeah.
and you were the 2019 recipient of the Institute for Public Relations Best Master's Thesis. So he started his master's thesis a little bit later, like at
A
30,
lot later. Yeah.
sometime around his 30th birthday. He was the 2024 recipient of the Canadian Public Relations Society's Thought Leader Award. He regularly speaks at conferences and events across North America. And he is here to talk to us today about and I love the title today, our workplaces facing a demonic job stealing robot invasion. How did you get interested in Gen AI?
Well, actually, that was part of the master's program. And in fact, my thesis that I wrote in 2019. So if you think about the timeline, ChatGPT came out in 2022. So there's a
Okay.
few years before that. The title was My BFF is a Chatbot. And I looked at how human AI agent relationships might affect the way we communicate and trust.
There are two sort of core things I'm hoping to learn about with you today.
Yeah.
The first one is I'm fascinated by your expertise in understanding how our relationships with AI agents will change or impact or improve or not the way we persuade and trust and how we get on with people at work. The second is about employment and jobs and the robot invasion. So so first, how will let me start with this one just because I'm so excited to learn about this. How will our social stuff change? Our communication, our relationships? Like, how do you think that's going to change from AI, broadly speaking?
Think probably going to trust machines a lot more than many of us realize. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's something that came out of my research way back when in 2019.
Really, eh?
Yeah, because we're already conditioned to trust machines. So if you think about it, Google search, something we've been doing for what, 20 some odd years,
Which,
we
by the way,
typically,
wow,
yeah, pretty amazing.
right?
When you type something in, we inherently kind of trust results. Of course, we're a bit skeptical. Hopefully, we're a bit skeptical
Yeah.
and have some form of media literacy that we apply to the results. If you think about, say, any GPS system, now imagine this. You're in a place, you're going somewhere, put the directions in GPS. The person sitting next to you says, "Oh, no, no, no. I know a better way.
Wait, have you met
I know
my
I should."
my wife?
Well, that's exactly it. So what happens? Who do you trust in that? Do you trust the GPS or your wife, your partner, someone you love, your child? And that suddenly you're shifting the balance of trust
Yeah.
between a person and a machine. And now when you have AI that not only sounds like us, complete with speech disfluencies, ums and uhs, there is no reason ChatGPT's advanced voice mode says, except that it makes us believe it's human. Why would a computer need to do that? It's got all the information there.
Right. Right. So that's it doesn't serve it. That stuff doesn't. Those fillers don't serve any need for the
No,
machine. It's for
except
us.
for, but they do for us
Yeah.
because we think, oh yeah, they're thinking too. Or when they go, oh, my bad. Well, really, you know, they're not really apologizing. Or
Right.
worse, when they're already sycophantic, so they already compliment you. But when they go, that you're so smart. Oh my God, that was such a great thing to say.
I remember reading this.
Wow.
Yeah.
And now with memory, they know a lot more about you.
I'm very interested in core social skills. So, like, for example, I think to myself, do we not need, I mean, I know the answer to this, but will our core social skills like kindness and openness and emotional intelligence, we won't need those anymore, or we still need them, or more than ever? Or what do you think about all that?
We don't need any of that stuff because the machines will do it all. No, I think we do need to keep that. And in fact, it's so funny. That was a question I asked when I did my master's thesis. And I interviewed computer scientists, I interviewed digital marketers, I interviewed entrepreneurs, journalists, researchers. So a kind of interesting range of people. One
Yeah,
of the questions I asked them was, should you be polite when you're talking to an AI?
I remember
And
this.
answers range from, no, are you kidding? Why? Just treat them like, they're your own object,
Right.
to, yes, you should always be polite, because if you're not polite to a machine, you will suddenly start to forget to be polite to a human. You'll start to forget to have empathy with a human. And so we'll lose some of these essential human characteristics that make us hopefully decent, moral people because of the possibility of superintelligence.
Hmm.
So a machine that is smarter than the collective of all of humanity, we don't know what's going to happen then. If it does happen, will it be nice to us? Will it leave us alone? Will it treat us like pets? Will it try to destroy us? Because of that possibility, I'm always polite to ChatGPT. I say my please and thank yous because I
Right.
want it to think I'm one of the nice
Right.
guys
Yeah,
and leave me
you're
alone.
preparing. You're being a futurist. You're preparing
Yeah,
for the demonic
I'm
robot
just,
invasion.
they go, oh yeah, he's all right. Let
So you
him
got to
through.
hedge your bets,
Yeah,
right? So I like this because I would like to think that there is a solid reason why. And of course, I mean, the other reason from my perspective is we're not going to stop anytime soon dealing with real people. So we don't want to train ourselves to treat other people like robots. So let's try to treat robots like people a little bit.
but
No?
remember, yes, absolutely. But remember, there is a difference,
Right.
at
Of
least for
course.
now.
Of course. So I saw this piece in Fast Company. I don't know if you
Yeah,
saw it.
I did. Yeah.
It was really incredible. And just for our listeners, it says it was about essentially while generative AI makes many really effortful tasks quick and easy, just because we can doesn't mean we should. And so the author says this. So I'm just going to read it out here. And it's a really great piece, I thought. He really peels apart the layers, does a really good job of splitting hairs around this. What is so insulting to me about those AI written messages, and he's talking about email, LinkedIn, social media, is that they take less time and consideration to produce than they do to consume. You are, by the nature of sharing those automated words, signaling to me that you care less about my time and attention than you do your own. Of course, you're free to believe that as much as you like in your own head. Just don't drop it into my inbox or feed because that's rude. So I found this to be very interesting, and he makes
Yeah.
some pretty interesting distinctions. What are your thoughts about that sentiment?
I agree with that sentiment. I think it goes to empathy,
Yeah.
and just thinking about the other person who you are communicating to. In marketing, really, you need to think about your customer first,
Right.
who you're talking, what are their needs? So I think when we're using AI, we need to think about the needs of the people who are on the receiving end. And do we just want to send out slop to go check that's done, check that's done, check that's done, rather than thinking about anything? And that's one of the things that worries me about AI, is that we're offloading too many cognitive skills. One thing that I don't see a lot of people talk about or write about is there's so much more content out there. because of generative AI. I'm reading an article. Ahrefs, the SEO site, found something like 75% of new web pages have AI content on them. That's incredible.
Wow.
There's lots more stuff out there, but our attention spans haven't grown. Our ability to process information, to read, think, understand something hasn't increased. So we are being bombarded with more, and we can only take in the same amount. And I think that's something to remember when you are using generative AI. And the author of that article, I think that's kind of
Right.
the essence of what he's trying to get at.
I think that is so crucial for us to wrap our heads around. It's kind of like Moore's Law. That's a very similar
Yeah,
kind of idea, right? So that we could talk a lot about the limitlessness of processing capabilities and information storage capabilities of technology. And we can probably increase that, in ways that we've never considered. But for us, it's not happening really very quickly, if at all, for humans.
no. And maybe it will if we're all connected to machines through our chip or our eyeglasses or whatever it is. But right now, I think it is important to think about people and to retain our humanity and, in a way, slow down a little
Yeah.
and think and reflect a bit more. Daniel Kahneman, system one and two. AI is definitely system one, although the reasoning systems are getting better at system two thinking.
Moving along there. Yeah.
They're moving along. We need to really hone in on system two thinking.
Yeah. I mean, and both us and Gen AI need to move in that direction,
Yeah.
right? I also read that article with a very similar kind of takeaway as you did. Not only is it about the respect of the other person, it's also about the fact that you just really have to be thoughtful. And I mean, like full of thought. And that if you read your stuff over, even for a moment, you got to know that anyone on the other side is going to know to some degree. I mean, nowadays, especially young people, they're like, they can spot it a mile away. They're like, yeah,
Yeah.
Gen AI. And we're becoming it. We could talk about long dashes and blah, 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 and whatever. But there are some telltale signs and there are some careless mistakes, like, a situation where someone wrote me and spelt a name wrong. And it's just so clear that that's not a spelling mistake. It's so clear that you just didn't have the time. And I think or didn't take the time, I should say.
Yeah.
And I don't care for that. And I think that's a problem because, as you're alluding to, it pisses the person off on the other side of the table,
Yeah.
you know?
And it shows you don't care. You just want to do something and get it off your list so you can move to something else, rather than taking any time to reflect. I also think that it's important for us to figure out, what do we love to do and what do we want to offload? So for me, for instance, I like writing. I like the accomplishment of knowing that I have written something. So all my newsletters, my LinkedIn posts, anything important to me, I do not use generative AI to write it because writing is something I love to do. Now, researching, that's where, I like to use it for getting help or getting perspectives from a different point of view. So you create a persona and ask it questions and it'll answer them. And all of a sudden you get insights that you might not have had because you know what? We know what we know and we
Right,
think what we think.
right, right. That is such an important thing to think about. Um, in a world of jobs where, and certainly I hear from my young students and more senior students too, it is so important for people to get some meaning out of work, right? To extract
Yeah.
meaning. Everybody wants some meaning from their work.
Yeah.
And so the notion that I'm going to take the parts of work that I like the most, that I extract the most emotional goodness out of, and I'm going to give it away seems pretty not smart,
Yeah.
you know?
It does. And of course, if you're working for a company, you've got to hopefully persuade your manager or your boss why, give them a good argument to tell them why you should be doing this versus a machine. And hopefully you can demonstrate value, do a little experiment to show them that, there are tangible results from you doing it this way. Say human first versus AI
Right.
first with human going check mark.
Right.
And I think that's something every organization, every company, every institution, like academic institution, is going to have to figure out how to deal with this. Like, how do we deal with that human AI contribution? We're both seeing it in every other professor or instructor we talk to. Like, we're seeing this with the quality of the work that's turned into us. On one hand, it's grammatically correct.
Yeah.
On the other hand, it can be really boring,
Right.
because it's the same thing over and over. You get an assignment, the assignment has, say, 3 questions or a big question, a project, whatever it is, and the students are responding by prompting their AI system in a similar way. And so the outputs are very similar,
Exactly.
and you don't get that personality. For me now, what I look for is I look for typos. Because if there's a typo, it's like, oh, glimmer,
Yeah.
human
Yeah.
there.
Exactly. There's a
Someone made a
human.
mistake. This is good.
That's
Yeah.
smart. And so that really brings me to the second sort of topic that I want to hear.
Yeah.
And again, it's closer to the robot invasion takeover part. I know that learning about and seeing how sort of the enterprise of Gen A is unfolding is compelling for you and many of our listeners as well. And like you just said, I think it's so smart, and it's funny because keeps on coming up in a number of the podcasts actually. It's the idea that like we have this option in front of us, and are we going to use our thinking to figure out how to use it, or are we just going to use it because it's there? So whether we're talking about, flexible work, whether we're talking about Gen AI, whether we're talking about, concepts and new ideas that we have at
Yeah.
Penn. So what would be an example? What would be a sort of typical task at work for a professional? What would they be using Gen AI for?
I mean, if you're in marketing, I would say your chances are you're a good writer.
Yeah.
So writing is something you can do. But in many other professions, in finance, in accounting, in
In
project
sales, maybe.
management, sales, you're not necessarily a writer.
Right.
And so here's where ChatGPT can really help you. I would say when you use it, just make sure that you add in your personality, because that's what makes any piece of content stand out. Personality, creativity. How can you make this more creative? And sometimes a machine can push you. Sometimes you can get a couple of different ideas and say, oh, I'm going to take part of this, and now I have something that is a little bit more original or unique
Has my
or
voice.
engaging. Yeah, has my voice. So I think those are the ways to do it. It goes back to figuring out what you really like to do, what you're good at, and where AI can supplement.
You consistently come back to some really important principles of being a marketer, which I know is a big part of your background.
Yeah.
And I like that. Like whether we're talking about, hey, you got to make sure the client thinks good of you and you take care of your client, as well as if you're a marketer, you probably are pretty darn good at writing, and you should exercise that muscle. I love hearing this stuff because it does, I think, stem some concerns that some people rightly have around whether or not AI is going to take away my job, right?
Yeah. And
Um,
that's a big question.
right.
That's a big question that every person in every company is grappling with now, because we don't know exactly how AI agents will work. So autonomous AI systems designed to do certain tasks in the workflow, like a research agent.
Mm.
If you've got a project like a pitch, you're pitching a new client
This is a
and
good
you get the
example.
brief. So you get the brief, you want to sit down and just outline every single step that you at, say, your agency goes through when you get a brief. What do? You read it, you have a meeting, you talk about it, people have questions, you send the client questions, they come back with answers, you start to brainstorm, you start to do some research, and then eventually it comes to a finished deck with a pitch. So as you start to go through that process, rather than going, okay, we do this way, start to just take it all apart and say, okay, here it is. How does AI fit, and where does AI fit as an autonomous agent? Where does AI fit with something that we use? So we push the AI, and how are we making it all work together
Yeah.
so that when you go to work, you feel like, okay, I had a good day today. I was productive. I came up with some great ideas. We really moved the needle. Flip side of this, like when you start it, you go, okay, we have this brief. So we read the brief, give the brief to the AI, let it read it, and then say, okay, what do you think of this? What are some insights? What questions do you have? Then you combine the AI questions with your questions, send them to the client. You know, things like
That is
that.
great.
Same thing with the brain. Now, the brainstorm, I was thinking about this on the weekend. You have these AI agents. Do you have an all human brainstorm first just to get the human creativity out there so there's a kernel of humanity in it?
Yeah.
Or do you have an AI agent who is actively participating and throwing ideas out, plus taking notes and summarizing things?
Right. Or both. Like,
Or both? Yeah.
it's so, I think for a lot of people, and like, in my work in exec ed, I meet a lot of people who like they know a little bit about, Gen AI and all the things that they read. But this is really helpful because when it comes down to it, I think a lot of people are like, okay, well, I don't really know how's this going to contribute to my job. And I think for a lot of people, when they ask me about it, I'm certainly no expert, but what I do as I make that major distinction that you just mentioned for our listeners, it's kind of like saying, do I just throw in, a prompt and let it come back with a bunch of content? Or do I use content that I have and use Gen AI to ask the content questions?
Yeah. We
And I
need to
really,
be more strategic.
I love that because in my world, you know, in psychology, in organizational behavior, everything's about the questions you ask.
Yeah.
And in social skills development too, it's all about what question are you asking the data that you collected? What question are you asking to be able to influence another person? What question are you asking? What questions are you asking your information, your market research, the outcomes of a job interview that you're doing? And I find this all the time in the real world, like the idea that let me use both the knowledge that I have, the knowledge that it has, and the asking of questions. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's actually a really great insight because it makes me think that maybe one of the purposes of generative AI is that it will help us grow our curiosity, ask more questions, dig more deeply, rather than just doing everything on the surface. And if we can do that, we can potentially go to places. Well, we can be on the Starship Enterprise to boldly go where,
Yeah,
you know.
I'm in.
And I think it's really important for marketers to read, watch, listen to, sci-fi, like consume sci-fi, because those scenarios, whether the positive ones or the dystopic ones, and there's so many of those, at least give us an idea. If you think about it, the movie Her was made in 2013, so
Yeah.
12 years ago. And everything in that movie is now pretty much available today. You can have your earbuds, you're talking to your AI assistant, your AI agent, it's in your head. It has access to your data. It knows all the stuff about you. It's making recommendations. It's helping you. It's answering questions. I mean, that's there. It seemed far fetched a few years ago, but that's where we are.
That is so interesting to think about it that way because in essence, then it becomes like any other sort of resource that we have that could be good or could be bad depending on how we
Yeah.
apply it. Like any tool, I guess. I think we can both agree. There's a lot of press. Like I saw this thing in Forbes about, it sells a lot of, clicks. Here's the top 10 jobs that will disappear. And, this sort of near apocalyptic treatment of the topic. Like it's going to, really like not massively change in a way that we're talking about, but massively change in a way that we become victims, in the short term. And it's like these jobs are just going to disappear. Is that, or is it more nuanced than that? Is that true
I,
or?
I think it's nuanced. I think we're going to see a lot of change. And it's something, every morning I wake up and I'm either extremely optimistic about the future or I'm scared out of my mind. And it's like this pendulum. I'm like this all day long when I think about these things, part because of science fiction, but also because of human nature. Well,
Yes.
I read a really interesting, very long research paper over the weekend talking about AI as an, in quotes, normal technology and looking at all the different technological transformations that we've been through from the printing press to the industrial revolution to computers, internet, and saying if we think of this as normal,
Yeah.
there there is still that lag space. Like there's so much hype, but there is time that's needed for diffusion to actually happen to people to put it into practice. Yes, there's going to be job loss. There are going to be jobs that are also created. The trick is now people are experiencing something called FOBO, which
Right.
is the fear of becoming obsolete. And it's very real because we
Yeah.
just don't know what we need to know. And there's a gap in training. The AI Marketing Institute just released their most recent study. They talked about how people want to be trained, but companies aren't providing the training they need. So I think that's one thing that needs to be there because we're all neophytes when it comes to AI. It's
Right.
pretty new.
Yeah, are there people that like, I always wonder about this because I see a lot of that. They're not prepared to do the training, and the result of which is this FOBO, which I was going to ask you about, which is great. I'm glad you mentioned it. The other is sort of like, there is still somewhere, especially in our field, by the way, this idea that if you're using it, you're cheating. Like it's like you're not really doing it if you're at all using this sort of all or nothing. Well, if you use Gen I, there's what's like an old man saying kids today
Yeah.
they don't learn and they're that whole
Yeah. No, I can relate to that because I feel a bit of that too
yeah
when you're using it because the struggle isn't there. And maybe the struggle, our cognitive struggle, just has to change. Maybe it is a matter of going back to what we talked about a couple minutes ago and
yes
your point about asking questions. Maybe
yes
it's asking deeper questions and getting into something in more depth or seeing it from a completely different perspective, which is tough to do. So
really
maybe
is.
that's what AI will help us
I
do.
hope
And
so
yeah,
because I mean people want to know how can I prepare myself? And obviously, you mentioned a few things. You said we need to be in organizations that are going to support um, training and development around this. What's the role that an individual plays? Like me, you, like if I'm gonna, somebody says to me, somebody mid career, early career says I'm technologically astute. I'm just not a Gen AI expert, and I don't want to feel the FOBO. What do I need to do?
I think there's certain skills that we can all acquire. And, but you have to be proactive about it. If you're not getting training at work, don't just sit there and go, oh, I wish I had training. I wish I had training. Be proactive. Figure out what you're doing, search for some courses and watch them try things out. We need to have a scientist mindset. I think companies do too. They need to say, okay, this is what we did. Now we have these new tools. How can we do a little test to see, okay, we're going to put in generative AI at the research phase. What is that doing? We're going to
Right.
put it in there at the concept creation phase. How do we use that? What do we do? How are we fact checking? All of these questions, do tests, and then you can start to map out this new workflow along with the training that's needed. I think in terms
Right.
of training, all of us need to learn how to talk to machines. We're great at communicating with people,
Sometimes.
but yes, sometimes. Yeah, you're right. You know about that.
Yeah.
But we're not necessarily as savvy as talking to machines, which is
Right.
really programming with words. We need to think, machines think logically. How can we give it instructions in a way that makes sense to that machine rather than just saying, okay, write me an ad, give me a blog post with this? How can we make our request have enough detail and nuance so that the machine knows which parts of its data set to draw on, so the output isn't just AI slop.
Right. This is really converging for me because, one of the most well known and sort of frequently taught models of interpersonal communication includes words like encoding and decoding. One of the essential components of it is encoding a message, a thought that will eventually become a communication in verbally or what have you, from something that's floating around in your skull to words that will resonate with the receiver on the other end,
Mm-hmm.
as well as the medium that you're going to use, your tone, the words, the meaning. And so a big part of it becomes about understanding what will resonate with in this case, thing on the other end, right? And so in a way, it's sort of pretty darn similar to this.
Yeah. It really is input output, right?
The garbage in,
Put it
garbage
in,
out.
get it out. Yeah.
And so I know we both know the answer to this, and probably people listening do too. I don't need to become a Gen AI expert to get educated, do I?
No, you don't, but you need to understand how to use the tools. In the same way, this is an analogy that people use all the time, driving a car. I can be a pretty good car driver without knowing what's going on under the hood.
Right.
I know how to use it. I know how to use it for my needs, and that's great. But I don't need to reassemble it into something different. I think that's what we need to figure out with generative AI.
That's good.
And that's, again, that conversation that companies need to have with employees. There needs to be a lot of transparency and openness and a willingness to test and learn and figure out, okay, what's working, what isn't. I think if we only focus on productivity, there's so much talk about, oh, use these tools to be more productive.
Mhm.
That's all we focus on. We're missing out on innovation and creativity. And those are the things that engage other people, our customers, the people we're trying to reach. And so we're just doing things fast, fast, fast. But it's just like, oh, more garbage, more garbage, more garbage, more
It's
garbage.
again, it's the same as interpersonal, and which I
Yeah,
think is really comforting for somebody like me to say that the kinds of skills that we need to make use of this technology are the same kinds of skills we need to improve the way we deal with other human beings.
yeah.
Catering your communication, focusing not exclusively on productivity, but also on, the spaces in between all that, and as well as the asking of questions and some of the other things we've spoken about. I'm really comforted to hear this.
And
And I'm,
thinking.
yes,
And
yes,
hopefully, this will turn into a positive outcome for everyone because every job has things that parts of it that you just don't like to do. And
of
if
course.
machines can help with that, fantastic.
Yes.
I mean, I don't miss not having a typewriter.
No.
I love having a computer because
Yeah.
one, it's faster, it's easier.
I mean, I hope you know this.
I don't.
It is rare for people of, let's say, a more seasoned generation.
Yes, the senior
No,
generation.
I'm saying seasoned.
Yeah, okay.
Um, to a be incredibly optimistic about the future. Which, by the way, if people are listening that have listened to the other podcasts, I am in that space. And secondly, to really think carefully about not being afraid to change and embrace new things, not being afraid of technology, not poo pooing it. I met recently, I was talking to a lawyer who's like my age, who's like, any lawyer who uses AI is terrible. I mean, things like that. And it's just like, and as somebody who loves history, I look back and I say, they said the same thing about the telephone, the radio, the television, all these things were going to destroy humanity, video games. None of these things came to be really, although I guess it depends on who you ask.
Yeah.
But I am excited about the accessibility of learning. And so it's important for people to know that, like, you don't even have to spend a lot of money to get a great course on Gen AI, do you?
No. And in fact, if you're affiliated with a school like Schulich, you have access to LinkedIn Learning. There's so many free courses. Google, I think, offers courses. I'm pretty sure OpenAI, Claude offers courses. So it's just a matter of taking the time to sit down, watch the videos, because most of these are video based, some are text based, going through them, thinking about them, and then actually testing it. Because if all you do is watch these courses and go, okay, check mark, watch the
Right.
course, I know how to do this, you won't really, you won't internalize it.
It's a really
And
interesting study just the other day in the Harvard Business Review about anything you learn in training.
yeah,
If you don't use it within, I don't know, like 10 days or something, you lose it.
yeah, it makes sense. When I was doing my master's, we had a data science course, data science for communicators. So one of the things we had to do is learn the basics of coding, something that I do not have a background with. And I started to get not great at it, but I could at least piece some very basic things together. Fast forward to today, how does that work again? Right? 'Cause I didn't use it.
Right.
I did, I didn't practice
And
it.
you speak too.
And
Like they say, use it or lose it, right? When you talk
yeah,
about that's amazing. When I'm talking to people privately, even executives that are really smart, amazing people, they see the work ahead of them in terms of learning about Gen I as a daunting, overwhelming beast. And it doesn't
yeah.
really have to be.
No, break it up into smaller parts.
Yeah.
Learn how to prompt, how to talk to machines, try things. And then something that a lot of companies are starting to do now, but I think individuals should do this too, is set up a prompt library. When you write a prompt that's good, put it in like a Google Doc or a
Right.
Word document or a file, label it, and then keep going back and updating it. Because all of a sudden, you're not starting from zero. You have a team of people, you're doing similar types of work. You can build some great prompts so people can take them, iterate, so experiment, build on them, and you have a resource that you can then
That's a,
that then adds value to your work.
that is so smart. It's like a
I
recipe.
wish I thought of that. I
Yeah,
read
right.
that,
It's
but
like a recipe book, right?
yeah, it is.
You know? So, how can people, this has been so fun. How can people learn more about Martin Waxman?
Connect with me or follow me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active there. Subscribe to my digital marketing trends newsletter. Check out my courses on LinkedIn Learning. Or if you're at Schulich, you could sign up for the Future of Marketing course, which is an elective, or to David Rice's undergrad Future of Marketing course, and of course, a Future of Marketing Institute. So all of those are ways that you could find out more, or ask ChatGPT, see if
Yeah,
it can help you out.
it'll dig in for you. Okay,
Yeah,
great. Okay, so this has become a thing that I really enjoy.
yeah,
It's my rapid fire
yeah,
questions. Okay, and hopefully you're prepared.
I
Um,
am.
what is the superpower you would choose? Would it be flight or invisibility?
Invisibility. I
Okay.
know that because I'm an introvert at
Okay.
heart. I may not seem that way. I'm kind of like a social introvert, but I like invisibility because then I can go places, look around, see, oh, that's really interesting.
I like
Yeah.
it.
So
Right?
rather than flying, because, my stomach just can't
It's not
take
going to
all
do it.
that up
Right.
in
It's
it.
like the roller coaster thing. I got
Yeah.
it. Okay. Now I'm going to ask this one in two ways based on some feedback I got from my son and daughter. Time travel. So first is time travel and you can't come back past or the future.
Oh, wow. So that makes a difference. Think past in that respect,
Right.
because I wouldn't mind, like lots of people, couple of do-overs.
Right. Slash
Hopefully,
investing in Google and whatever. Yeah.
yeah, or no, just to revisit things that really mean something to me.
Yeah.
I mean, we're heading to the future. We can't stop that. And so also, I like nostalgia. So what can I say? Yeah, definitely the past.
Okay. And what if you could come back and forth? Like, so the first place you go would be past or future.
Oh, still past and then future.
Okay. I
Sort
like
of
it.
like Back to the Future.
Okay. Yeah. 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 And don't touch anything and don't
Yes.
change anything. Oh, that's so funny. Okay. And to me, again, my most important question, as always, is cake or pie?
Chips.
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 Oh, you
Yeah,
can't. You're going for the third option.
I'm going for the third option. Yeah, for me, it's salty or savory. No, only because I am allergic to so many things like nuts, nut oils, all that stuff.
Right.
So cake or pie is dangerous, but chips,
Okay.
that's where I
Right.
know I
Okay.
can get my snacking
Ooh,
needs.
you're really shaking it up here on the Way Forward podcast.
Thought I'd
Yeah.
try to something a little
Oh
different.
my God, that's incredible stuff. I love that. This was a lot of fun. Yes,
Yeah.
Martin?
Oh, fantastic. Happy to come back anytime. In fact,
Amazing.
2 weeks from now, we'll
Yeah.
do it. No, just kidding.
Well, I feel there's, you know what, the good feeling is there's always more. When I feel that there's always more to talk about, I'm sure you've
Yeah.
had this same experience. I really do appreciate you taking the time. I hope everybody really enjoyed our discussion today with Martin Waxman. And be sure to check out all of Martin's various ways of learning about Gen AI, and be sure to take the time to jump in to learn about it more yourself, not feel that it's daunting. We'll see you next time on the Way Forward podcast. The Way Forward podcast is brought to you by Canada's #1 business school, the Schulich School of Business. See you all again soon.